Welcome to Building Programs, Building Brains, Diversity and English Language Development for Grades Kindergarten to 8. This training was developed by BOSNet in partnership with UMass Boston, with funding from the Massachusetts Department of Early Education and Care, and brain building is in progress. At any time, you can hover over any of these logos to learn more. This is interactive presentation number 5, Curriculum Design. Curriculum is a collection of activities or lessons or interactions that you plan to do with the children that has the goal of building key competency areas for the students. So again, thinking back to the various standards and best practices that we looked at, and especially those Massachusetts curriculum frameworks, there are competencies and skills that exist within those. And the idea behind curriculum is that it's multiple different lessons or activities that focus on achieving or strengthening specific goals or competency areas. A good curriculum will offer a variety of different ways for the children to experience learning and practicing those skills, and will span in fact, all different learning approaches or learning styles, so that all children have a chance to sort of be in their element and have their natural ways of connecting to that skill or that information. Good curriculum will also align to the best practices and standards that we looked at a little earlier in the training. Earlier in this course, we mentioned thematic curriculum and project-based learning, and we're going to be taking a little bit of a closer look at those two tools now. Thematic curriculum weaves together all of the different strands of the different standards and best practices and the different core elements of curriculum to make them into sort of a beautiful, connected whole. The idea behind thematic curriculum is that not only is it the bridge that holds all of these different standards and ideas and requirements together, but that it also builds engagement and interest in the children because they can get excited about the theme that you're exploring together. So it's really important to pick themes that the kids are interested in and care about. And it also builds linkages across learning, which is an idea that we'll explore more in a moment. So thematic curriculum, one of the benefits of it is that it takes a core set of ideas or concepts, and it allows the learners, the students, to connect and interact with those concepts across a broad span of different interactions, ideas, and approaches. The benefit of this is that if you learn about something from just one perspective, then you're getting a bunch of facts, a bunch of information, and that's good, it's important. But the more different ways that you interact with the same idea or set of ideas, the more three-dimensional and subtle and complex your understanding of that idea or set of ideas becomes, and you become more able to take it apart and put it back together in different ways and to apply concepts that you learned within that element of your expertise and take those concepts to other elements of the world and reapply them. So let's take the example of gardening. Let's imagine that a teacher is in a group with kids and teaches them some basic ideas about gardening and growing plants. This is what plants are, this is what they need in order to live, this is what a garden is, this is why we have gardens. That's great, and it's very valuable, but the next thing that teacher might do is get a bunch of garden tools and say, everybody, thinking about what we've learned so far about gardening, imagine what these tools are for. Make up uses for them and invent new tools that you think would be useful for gardening. So this is a really fun, imaginative project. She might even give them craft supplies like toothpicks and straws and marshmallows and tape and paper that they can use to craft in 3 dimensions models of their own imaginary gardening tools. So now they have a whole other relationship to the idea of gardening. Now imagine that the teacher finds an opportunity to take the kids out and let them actually plant things in a garden, or maybe has a windowsill garden that she creates in the classroom. So the kids are now having a hands-on experience of seeing some of the things that they've learned about and trying out some of the tools that they've explored. Now they're having sort of their own physical experience of the learning. So there's a whole other layer occurring for them now. Then let's imagine that the teacher says, okay, let's learn more about what things we grow in the garden. And she gets different things, flowers and plants and fruits and maybe even parts of plants like stems and roots. And she has a sensory a series of sensory tables where the kids can reach into a paper bag and feel things. They can sniff them, they can touch them. At some tables, maybe they can even taste them. And they can see what they could learn about these different objects by using their different senses, and what they can imagine or conclude about them by using their senses. Next, let's imagine she has a conversation with them about all of the different ways that gardening can exist in the world, all the different ways that it's useful in the world, from gardens feeding into ecosystems like the caterpillar pictured here eating the leaf and turning into a butterfly, and then what butterflies are good for and how they spread pollen, and how the pollen in turn helps the garden to be healthier, all the way up to growing food to feed large quantities of people, or even gardens that are there just to bring pleasure or joy. And finally, she plans a field trip to a public garden like the Boston Common, where the kids get to run and play and enjoy the value of a public garden, and that gives them yet another way of relating. So now their ideas about gardening have been spread across so many different types of experiences that the ownership of those concepts is much deeper and much more valuable. And that's the core idea behind thematic curriculum. When you're creating thematic curriculum, you're going to think first about your program. Think about your schedule, the way that it's set up. Think about the activities and the learning blocks. And don't just think about the activity blocks that are sort of traditionally more academic or learning times, but also think about those times when not that much enrichment is usually going on, but there's a great opportunity to slip a little bit of enrichment into the background. So, for instance, that might include snack time or meal times. It might include homework. It might include free play. It might include club time or gym time, pool time if you have a pool. Any of those times that you're normally just kind of hanging out and not so much focused on reaching learning goals. Those are great opportunities to just slip a little conversation in, or encourage the kids to pay a little more attention to what they're hearing so that they can build on some of those skills. Then you're going to choose your time frame and your theme. A lot of times a good time frame is a week. Having a different theme every week tends to keep the kids really interested and engaged. Sometimes you'll have an overarching monthly theme with weekly sub-themes. Like, for instance, a really common summer theme is Around the World in One Summer. So that theme lasts for the entire summer, but then each week there's a different country theme from a place around the world. The next thing you are going to want to do is take a look at the WIDA and Curriculum Frameworks standards for the ages and comfort levels or skill levels of the kids that you're working with in your groups, and pick out some things that you want to accomplish with the thematic curriculum plan for that week. Once you've picked out some different areas that you want to help the kids grow or evolve, then you can find specific standards both in the WIDA and in the curriculum frameworks that you want to be sure to incorporate. And identify those specific standards. Make sure that you jot down the standard numbers so you can include those in the lesson plans. Also review the Universal Design for Learning and make sure you're including different types of learning elements for all the different learning needs and learning styles of the kids in your program. And then you're going to plan all your activities, including snacks and gym time or free play time, and things to happen during homework time during the school year, so that the theme is present during all of those times. So it's not just like there's a theme block, but so that the entire week, the whole week, you're living and breathing that theme, because that is what makes thematic curriculum so powerful. And then make sure that you're making connections back to those skills that you chose from the WIDA and the thematic curriculum. From the WIDA and the curriculum frameworks, pardon me. And in your lesson plans, be sure to make a note of what WIDA and curriculum framework standards you're pulling out and strengthening. Neat. So once you've chosen your theme and you've kind of created the plan for the week with your thematic curriculum, where you are infusing all of the different time blocks or units of the day with the theme, then it's valuable to write out lesson plans, especially for those more complex activity times. Ideally, of course, best practice is to write out a lesson plan for everything that you do, but for most programs that's not super realistic. So you at least want to make sure you're writing out lesson plans for those core times where you're really anchoring your thematic curriculum with a new learning or a new skill, or really focusing on strengthening something from the WIDA and something from the curriculum frameworks. When you're writing a lesson plan, it's not just about saying, here's the skill we're going to learn and here's how we're going to learn it. There are two pieces, the first piece and the fifth piece on this page here, that are they're actually the most important pieces in terms of anchoring the learning for the children, and a lot of times they get skipped over. So the first piece is the introduction. You want to start, before you launch into the activity, you want to start off with a story or a fact or a problem or a question or just something that will spark the interest of the kids and get them curious and thinking about what you're about to do. And make sure that while you're doing that, you're showing your excitement and your enthusiasm for the upcoming activity, because that's going to really build their energy and build their enthusiasm. The second piece is really practical, which is what is the stuff that you need, space-wise or materials and supplies-wise. And the third is the directions for the children. And you'll see it says multimodal there. The reason it says that is because since some kids learn better from looking, some learn better from listening, and some learn better from doing, you want to try to make sure that your instructions are presented in a written form and in a spoken out loud verbal form so that kids can relate to them different ways. And then before you start, make sure that you give the kids time to practice or try out little pieces of it if it's complicated, or at least to chat amongst themselves to make sure that everybody around them understands the instructions. Then the fourth step, of course, is to just implement, to adapt as you need, but to implement the activity that you created. And then the fifth step, which is also just so important, is to follow up after the activity and talk about it. You could have them journal about it. You could have them do a found objects collage. You can have them do a graffiti wall where you put up paper and they create graffiti to reflect on what they learned or what they tried. Have a conversation about it. Make an article for the newsletter together. Have them put together a post for your Facebook page or your Twitter account describing what they did. Have them debate about it. Whatever you want to do, but something that has them go back and think about what they were doing and what they thought about it and what they learned from it, because that's what really fully anchors that learning into their mind and makes it their own. Every time you write out a lesson plan, make sure that you're including the information about the WIDA standard, the curriculum framework standards, and the theme or themes that are in your activity so that you can save those copies in a binder in your organization, and in future years, you or other people can pull them out and reuse them again if they were successful. Project-based learning dovetails really nicely into thematic curriculum. The project-based learning that you choose to do, the project-based learning activity, should be chosen after you've selected your theme, and it should link to the theme that you're doing, but it should also connect to interests or questions that the kids have raised. It could be a question from a previous theme or a previous activity or unit. It should be something that builds on skills that the kids already have, so making sure that it's sort of challenging and interesting to them, and it should have a variety of different ways that the kids can engage with different roles or different jobs. A good project-based learning project is going to be something that's hands-on, that the kids can feel like they're actually making something, trying something, being involved in something real and meaningful. It should be collaborative. It's not an independent project that one person does over in a corner all by themselves. It's either going to be small teams or one big huge team of the whole group together. It should be as child-directed as possible. So give the outline of what the project is and what they're going to try to accomplish, but let the kids try to figure out how to accomplish that as much as possible. Give them help if they ask for it, but if they're heading down a path that's not going to be effective, let them head down it for a bit and see if they figure out a better path. Let them explore and try. It should also connect to the interests of the kids who are in your group, so aligned to the being age appropriate for them, and also to what your particular group is interested in. It should have some kind of a concrete end product that they can talk about, tell about, see. It could be a play that they perform or a song that they write, a book that they make, an object that they build. It could even be, as in one example at the end of a thematic curriculum about heroes, a care package for soldiers overseas that the kids get to then send. But there should be some kind of meaningful, concrete end product. And the project-based learning should be something that takes some time. It shouldn't be something you can do in one day or in one activity block. It should take multiple days or weeks or sometimes even months to complete. The next thing that's going to happen after you finish this presentation is you're going to look in the course room and you're going to see samples of thematic curriculum, that's the TC, with project-based learning component, that's the PBL, built right into them. So you're going to look at those, peruse them, see what you see, learn what you learn, and then we're going to ask you to put everything all together and apply what you'd learned, and have an actual experience of applying all of this information. Okay, so let's check and see whether you learned what we were hoping to teach you in this presentation. True or false? Thematic curriculum and project-based learning help bring together standards and best practices and improve learning outcomes for children.